I knew that would happen. Sorry. Okay, maybe that'll help. Good morning. You know, you might not have realized that I worked in the pulp and paper industry for many, many years. And so that reading really means a lot to me because I know what goes into making a sheet of paper. And it's a lot of people, places, things, a lot of dedication, a lot of commitment. And I love what Thich Nhat Hanh says about the interbeing. You know, one time I did a talk on what makes a wooden pencil, and when you think that all these things come from around the world and people transporting things and mining things, it really shows how the oneness is truly who we are and how dependent we are on all other people. So this thing about interbeing, we're interbeing with the plants and animals that we eat. The people who make our clothes, who grow our food, the people who populate our community. The very world we perceive is what we believe. You know, we're one with the fruit trees. We're one with the insects that pollinate the fruit trees. We're one with the big trees that give us shade. But on the spiritual path, I know that's true. I can feel it's true. And then we live in this era of fake news. Is it really true? You know, I have these beliefs, I have my assumptions, and every once in a while I have to say, wait a minute, I'm hearing something that I don't think I can believe. Is it really true? The dictionary says that truth is that quality of being honest and accurately relating facts. Accurately, what's that all about? It's stating an indisputable fact, an obvious fact, or just a fact that we've decided to accept for ourselves. Or it can be an agreement that we've made with someone that becomes the truth of what we do. You know, I believe in gravity. I can't prove it to you. I don't even think science can prove it, but I believe it because people tell me that's what it is, and it's always working. I don't worry about it. It's working all the time. And here in this center, we have a number of truths. God is all there is. Is it really true? God created the universe and we're part of it. Is it really true? Another truth we say is there's never a spot where God is not, because God is everywhere present. You know, sometimes I don't like using the word God. I like infinite intelligence. There's this infinite intelligence behind everything that is creating all that is happening and using the creative process. It's the energy of God that is in the creative process. And another one we say is God is good all the time. Now, perhaps you're not really sure of that one. And if you aren't, please take my class in the fall on Emma Curtis Hopkins. And we'll go through that. And if you've taken Emma, you know, by the end of that class, you're going to know God is good all the time. An Indian sage taught that illusions of truth exist because we don't investigate them. We haven't asked whether our thoughts truly represent the truth. Do they represent our current experience? Because sometimes we have mental suffering. We're arguing with ourselves. Is this true or not? We're called to investigate. When someone says this is the truth and we sense, yes, I agree with that, it's one thing. But if we say, I don't know if I agree with that, it's time for us to do the investigation. Now, Paul and I are avid readers. You would not believe the number of magazines, books, newspapers, newsletters, and periodicals that we get. And we are always trying to find our judgment of what's really true in the world. And when we read enough stuff, we go, I don't believe that, I believe that. Well, that might be true. And I can say, I think I know what's going on in the world. It would be my truth, but probably not your truth. So in this era of fake news, there are some sources I don't trust, and there are other sources I do trust. But there are times, too, when that source I trusted says something, I go, now, wait a minute. Just wait a minute. And then maybe this other source that I didn't trust says something totally rational, totally believable, and I go, well, why didn't I believe them before? So this is what we're up against in deciding what's true in the world. We can get a very distorted view, really. And that distorted view can limit what we think we should be doing in our life. The question I'd written down is, would you want to be a news correspondent in the Ukraine? How about Paris? That might be fun. Or how about Baghdad? Do you really know what a news correspondent does? That would put a whole new slant on it, wouldn't it? Then Baghdad might be more interesting than Paris. But all our thoughts and beliefs are true. I'm sorry, they're real. Our thoughts and beliefs are real, but they're not necessarily true. And the Buddha illustrated this with a story. He said there was a king who had 4 blind men brought to him. He wanted the blind men to describe an elephant. So he put one on the tail, one on the trunk, one on an ear, and one on a leg. And they went on to describe an elephant, the whole elephant. But of course they could not be describing the whole elephant. They left out so many parts of an elephant. And so they started to argue among themselves. You're lying, this isn't true. Because it wasn't their experience. Each one assumed the part of the elephant they touched was the whole truth. So every belief that we have is a snapshot. It's a limited snapshot. It's not the full truth of reality. And some of our beliefs are fear-based. Now, in Science of Mind, we believe that we're part of the world. But when we get into fear, there's something that is separating us from the community, a group, maybe from God. And if we are living in fear about something that we believe in, which is a snapshot in time, we can do some real self-destructive behaviors. We can create conflict around the dinner table or while Paul and I are playing cards. It's like, what? What did you say? We can suffer because we've mistaken a belief or a thought or a feeling for reality. There's also that moment of truth when this person says this and this person says that, and you don't believe them all, but you put them together and come up with another truth, a whole new truth that fits your reality. You know, yesterday, I was reading the paper about that big rig that slammed into the back of a pickup truck, and the pickup truck occupants were killed. And at the end of that article, my heart just sank because witnesses said the pickup truck was coming from the opposite direction. I thought that's interesting, but in a traumatic situation like that, what we see is often not what's true. The big rig slammed into the back of the pickup, but witnesses said the truck was coming. So I don't know how that could be. But anyway, it's up to the police to investigate that. And whatever report they come out with is supposedly the truth. And I guess my wish as a minister, as I was reading that, is I hope the families get comfort from that and can believe it. I hope that they trust the source that gives the final report on what actually happened. Pema Chodron is a Buddhist teacher, and she says sometimes when we wake up from a long train of thought, like if we've been brainstorming and thinking about our ultimate vacation or anything else, it's waking up from a dream. While we're in it, the experience feels real. We're going to go on a cruise to up in Canada this fall, and I could feel it already. I can feel being on the ship, and seeing the water and eating good food, and it is real in my mind, but it's not real in my present moment. But I feel really good about it. But it's not true in the moment. It's not true in the moment. Our thoughts are real. They're happening. I could feel it. My body could feel the ocean breeze. But that's really virtual reality thinking, isn't it? We're there, we can feel it, we know it. But we get disassociated from what's happening right now in our life. I can be on the deck and looking across the lake and feeling really good, not paying attention to one of the water spigots in the ground that's popped up and blowing water everywhere. So it can disassociate us from reality at times. Another Buddhist teacher, whose name I can't pronounce, I have to admit that, I hate mispronouncing names, but he uses the phrase real but not true when we're in the midst of obsessing about something. What will go wrong? What's wrong with others? What's wrong with our kids? What's wrong with the world? What's wrong with this? What's wrong with that? And when we get so obsessive about it, all that gets saved in subconscious mind. Hopefully there's some inner wisdom that says, wait a minute, stop. In the present moment, none of that is happening. In the present moment. It's real in our mind, but it's not true, and it's time to investigate. If you go home today with no other word, investigate. It's important because our core beliefs, the ones that get lodged in subconscious mind, are acting in our lives. They're activating our creative experience in life. They're drawing to us like energy. Usually those core beliefs come from some experience that we've had, positive or negative. But they impact everything that we're doing every day. They filter our experience. So when something happens, we instantly respond with our typical energetic belief, our typical response. For instance, if a friend of ours is standing here and I ask them a personal question and they're so preoccupied with themselves they don't answer me, my first inclination might be, I must not be important to them. That would be an instant response when I'm ignored. How could that be? Well, it probably happened sometime in the past, and I take that person's not paying attention to me as a personal insult. Real, but probably not true. If our boss asks us to redo something, let's say a big report, asks us to rewrite a report, my instant response might be, I'm no good. Oh, I'm failing at everything. How could I be so sloppy to do a bad job? But if I investigate, he may want this report to have been about something totally different and I missed it. He may have had a totally different idea of how this report should be laid out. But if I investigate, I might find out, like I did in my experience in the pulp and paper industry, my boss wanted this report to be so good that he could show it around to other people about how really cool and good I am. But I would have missed it. I would have missed it. So investigation is really important. In that way we can start to see there are other possibilities at work here. It was really interesting recently to observe what we call the leadership of the center. Leadership is anybody who wants to be part of the leadership, making decisions and taking care of things. But it was interesting for me to observe the interrelationship of all the leaders in deciding to spend considerable money in our reserve funds to take care of the damage that the snow did out back, to take care of cutting down all the hanging branches that were broken off, to decide to go ahead and seal, it isn't done yet, but it's on the calendar, seal the flat roof over the social hall and the offices and all the leaks that we've had over the many years. It's time to do these things. And it was hard to decide, but finally we said, we've got the money to do it. We've been good stewards. And then someone said, well, what if we spend all our money and more happens? I said, well, okay, where's your trust? Are all these things really emergencies that need to be fixed? Yes and no. But we decided to do what we do best, trust in God. Trust in our heart. Trust in you. We know there's always plenty. If we go forward with this in an atmosphere of lack, we're going to trip ourselves up. But we know we have the funds to do it. So replenishing those funds will happen. So if you go back to the table, you'll see these little squishy balls. They're called stress reducers, and it's got our logo on it. And if you make a donation, you can have a stress-reducing ball, and then sign on that little journal there. We're getting some really cute comments. Thanks for having the nerve and the guts and the strength and the courage to do what needs to be done. I love that comment. I just love it. So we have to pay close attention to our beliefs because they do impact everything we do and say. You know, if you're believing you get criticized too much, you become very defensive when someone does criticize you because you expected it. Your fears were realized. And Buddha said it this way: if your mind is captured by fear and misunderstanding, then trouble will follow you, as sure as the wheel follows the ox pulling the cart. I love that. It's a good visual. The wheel follows the ox pulling the cart. Byron Katie says it this way: you're either attaching your beliefs to your thoughts or you're inquiring, investigating. There's no other choice, because the purpose of inquiry or investigation is to take a moment and look at our assumptions. What are our assumptions about this? So in that little space of a pause, you're asking, what am I really believing about this? What am I believing? A man came to talk to me recently because he had a very painful argument with his son. The dad assumed that was the way he knew his son would learn if dad was angry. That angry emotion from your father. And I said, is that really true? Is that how your son learns? I suggested, it might be more valuable to say, son, I know within you is the wisdom to do what's right, the wisdom to know the next step in your life. I know you have the wisdom to discern right from wrong. And Dad said, wow, never tried that. I've always been on alert for what could go wrong. Can you imagine the tension between the dad and the son? Then the dad says, son, I now recognize you as your own individual being who is wise, who knows. What a change that would make. One method of investigation is to pay attention to what's happening with the energy in our body, because our beliefs are energy, and they're in our body, and there's this energy flow, and if we have a limiting belief, I'm not good enough, let's say, there may be a tightness when someone asks us to do something. When a boss says, rewrite this paper, there may be a tightness, a grip, something that holds us back. Raymond Charles Barker wrote, problems are indicators that something must be done in our mind. I love that. Our beliefs, our emotions, our behaviors, our energies that settle in various parts of our body. I was married at age 19, and we lived in Navy housing in Whidbey Island up in Puget Sound, and it was a meager living, Navy housing, and we had all these great plans for the future. And 6 months later, I thought I was pregnant, and I could just see those plans evaporating. At the same time, I started having this twitch in my left eyelid. It was so irritating. I thought, good grief, I'm pregnant, my eye's twitching, what am I going to do? I went to the doctor, and he said, you're not pregnant. I said, well, what am I going to do about this twitch in my eye? And it was gone. Instantly gone. I couldn't even make it do that. I tried. I couldn't make it do that. because that was an energetic symbol of my nervousness, my worry, my concern. And so when I think about that, the mind-body connection at age 19, I have to laugh. You know, sometimes that's the way we learn, but I'll never forget that. But I do pay close attention to what's happening in my body. Am I twitching or, you know, what's going on here? So when you have a negative belief, you might take time to sense where that negative energy is settling in your body, because it's adapting to living with you. It's adapting itself to live with you. Oh, I've had this pain in my back for years. Come and see a practitioner. Let's talk about energy flow. Let's talk about beliefs. Let's talk about assumptions. About a year ago, a lady from Southern California called me. I don't know how she found my name, but she said, I really need a spiritual mind treatment, our form of affirmative prayer. And I said, well, what's happening? And she said, I've been diagnosed with hepatitis C. She's 67 years old. And so I started asking her questions, and I found out she's been in the science of mind teaching for over 20 years, thoroughly believes it. And I said, well, do you know the author Louise Hay? And she said, oh, yes, I do. Louise Hay is an author that for many years studied where energy settles in our body and the cause of that, the mental cause of that. And so I said, would you mind if I pulled her book off my shelf and read to you what she says about hepatitis C? And she said, oh, that would be fine. She was courageous. And I opened it, hepatitis C, cause deep, deep regret. I said, does that mean anything? She said, oh, yeah. Yeah. Last year, I retired from a job I had for many, many years. I loved the people, I loved the work, and now every day I regret it. I said, sweetheart, you need to get a hobby. Take your mind off the past. That deep regret every day, can you imagine? So then I did a prayer on letting go of the past and opening up to a beautiful, wonderful, healthy future. So just see, I didn't leave her there. So maybe you can take time this week and look for a negative belief that you've been carrying around with you because your body's adapting to it. What would my life be like without this belief? How would it change how my body feels? How would it improve my relationships? How would it renew my enthusiasm for life? Give it a try. Give it a try. I hope this has been helpful because I love this quality of being honest and accurate as best we can. It's still up to our consciousness if we believe anything. But today we know the truth is there is a cloud in all my papers here. There is sunshine in all my papers here. There's a logger out there who brought me logs at the pulp mill that we made into paper. And it's all in here. Without paper, this talk would never go into my next book that I'm writing. So we're all part of this interbeing. And it's beautiful, and it's rhythmic, and it's full of grace, and it's full of love if we choose to believe in that. And that's why I see, anybody in Science of Mind sees the universe as God's playground. And as a student of Science of Mind, that's why I trust in the process of life. And so that is. So let's pray about that. Oh. This is the 10th rendition of this talk, by the way, in the last 3 days. It's so interesting how these things come to us. Because I do know the truth. God is all there is. That energy that created the universe is all there is, and it's still here, and it's still evolving. It's still expanding. And when I tap into that, when I say, you know, Spirit, this knowledge is out here in the universe. I need some help with this talk. How am I going to talk about truth? And then the words come. and the books kind of fall off my shelf, and I find inspiration in places I had not anticipated. And that's what investigating is all about. Investigating our lives, our beliefs, what we think is bad, what we think is good. The investigation opens our mind up to universal intelligence. And that is good. So I know these words today touched your heart in some way and hopefully encourage you to be the investigator in your life. Don't take everything for granted or everything that someone says that's been a good source of information as the truth. Find reality and find truth, and it will set you free. So I give great thanks for this time today to share what's been passionately on my mind this week. Knowing the words come from my heart to yours, and from my heart to Spirit, who always says yes. So I give great thanks and release these words, knowing they are so, and so it is. Thank you.